The much-reported Hawks investigation into Minister Pravin Gordhan ended with the announcement that the minister is to present himself before the courts on the 2nd of November. This announcement has shocked the nation and affected the markets as it comes 2 weeks before the minister is set to present the mid-term budget review. Pravin Gordhan has been leading delegations across the world to punt South Africa as an investment destination and to forestall the possible credit ratings downgrade. Chief Economist at Investment Solutions is Lesiba Mothata, who joins us to talk about the implications of this move against Minister Gordhan. And thanks very much, Lesiba, to join us.
Thank you.
Did you receive the news with a shock, or is it something that you sort of were anticipating that it will happen soon, in a way, waiting for it anxiously, apprehensively, saying or thinking to yourself, let it happen so that we can have a sense of what we're dealing with?
What's going on? Look, with the delegation that has gone overseas, led by the Minister of Finance, was sending a signal that perhaps there is a conversation that has ensued that was meant to deal with the matter. Because he had gone out in New York, he held it down for South Africa, explaining what we can do as a country. In fact, when you do a relative analysis of South Africa to other emerging market countries like Brazil, we're really not doing too badly. And there were messages that are understandable. Even I think rating agencies would have absorbed such an outcome. So to allow a person to have gone out the way it has happened, and now when a very important document which is going to be put out, the medium-term budget policy statement, before that happens, and we recall back even before the budget was put out in February, there were all these issues, it leaves one feeling very anxious. In fact, it's very undesired because the standoff that is happening is not good for everyone. It's chipping out confidence. It's chipping out the ability of the country to actually weather the economic storms that are happening here. We're already fragile. This is just weakening us even worse. Because there are alternative ways of doing this.
What are the alternative ways then?
Well, the alternative ways is to make sure that you prioritize the important thing. I wouldn't be averse to an outcome where much later after the budget, if anyone is found wanting and there is a legal thing that needs to happen, I think it ought to happen. It ought to be happening, but in a more normal way that we can expect
and managed
in a country,
way.
in a managed way, not in a way that just creates anxiety as this one is. Make the important things count.
But
make the budget count.
See, but there are people who argue when it comes to these matters, and we'll come back to the economics of it and say, well, everyone is equal before the law. So what's so special about Minister Pravin Gordhan? There's a body in our society, a section that believes that this is normal course of dealing with things. And of course, look at the charges against him as well. I'd like, that to your mind, did they warrant this urgency and the manner in which he was handled?
Yeah, everyone is equal in front of the law, but this is a special case. We come from a point where the Minister of Finance was removed. In December, this country was facing an abyss in terms of financial flows. You saw bond yields go up, we saw equity markets falling, sentiment was deteriorating fast. Decisions were made quick to avert that outcome, and now we're sitting a few months later with seemingly an outcome that has not been learned from the December one. This is a special case. Not everyone is above the law, but it has to be done with the interests of the country at the center of it all. Because the way it's unfolding at this point in time, it's not demonstrating that. And I think that's an important thing that needs to be remembered. We cannot continue this way.
Let's digress for a moment and focus on what's going on at the universities, right? The fees must fall campaign that's continuing, and it's turning violent and ugly in itself, creating a wrong impression around the world about South Africa, right? That we were headed for trouble. And a delegation or a task team is put together by the president, and Minister of Finance is excluded from it. And we're talking fees here, we're talking funding here. What did that tell you?
Well, there's a reshuffle imminent. Does it mean that the Minister of Finance is not on that schedule? It potentially could mean that. Demonstration by students is a normal thing.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere, including Germany only under 2 years ago. A similar outcome,
Yes.
a similar outcry was happening out of Germany. We need to think about how we fund education. I don't think it's free. I
Yes.
don't think you can get a free
Yeah, it will
education.
receive- yes.
You know,
Yes.
but there will be, and I would imagine there will be a contribution that comes from the government from this end. But to not have the Minister of Finance at the center of discussions to this end, I think is problematic. We need to find a united country, at best, a united leading party. We need the ANC to sit down together and present a solid view that is united and it presents this country better going forward, not factions, the way we see
the
it.
Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, actually spoke to this, not once, several times, using the words that government must not be seen to be at war with itself, right? It will take only a naive person not to notice that there is definitely a war going on. And if you ask me, I would say it's been going on anyway, since the start of everything. So what has been put forward is just what seems like a united front, but behind the scenes stuff has been going on.
I appreciate, and there are problems and there are issues, but they can be dealt. If you put the interests of this country in the center, we can deal with the issues. Actually, we must not embarrass ourselves in front of the world that looks at us and say, well, this young democracy, after such continuous, consistent, great leadership in institutions, we erode world-class institutions like that of the National Treasury. It is undoubtedly world-class. The way the debt is managed there, the whole institution and its infrastructure, it really is it can be paralleled with the likes of Sweden, better than the US, better than the UK. We cannot erode such infrastructure over what I'll call petty politics. We have to put South Africa at the center of things. If there are any issues that need to be dealt, they have to be dealt in unity, within a room that makes sense, and we take this country forward. We can avert a downgrade as far as I'm concerned, but at this rate we're going, we're just handing ourselves at the slaughterhouse.
If you were to make a call, do you think the downgrade is definitely imminent?
You know what? Without these political issues, it was going to be easily avoided. We have a tailwind that's coming out of China. South Africa and China are linked in a big way. That's helping. Sub-Saharan Africa, they're demanding our exports. In fact, they're assisting that we have a better outcome in terms of economic situations. The US is not imploding. Europe is also not imploding. So what's happening out there is that there's a strong, a lustful desire to hold emerging market assets, which includes South Africa. All these things are helping. For a Standard & Poor's to sit down and think about South Africa and compare it to Brazil, it'd be very difficult to find an outcome that really is commensurate to that. Now we put this situation in the picture. You're just handing yourself to the silver platter of opinion. That will mean we'll be non-investment grade. And I'm also concerned of the view that comes out that suggests that we don't need rating agencies, that suggests there's a Western influence into these things. I appreciate all that. But you can speak like that if you're like a Russia, where you have a current account surplus, where your currency has depreciated so much and you've got strong exports and you don't need capital investment in the country. Although our current account deficit has improved, we are now at 3.1%, we still need it funded. And we do have a strong contingency of foreigners participating in our bond markets, in our equity markets, and all that suggests you really cannot forget or show the middle finger the Western money.
I want to go back to the statement that the Minister Pravin Gordhan issued earlier this year when he was sent the list of questions, and he issued a statement saying he's calling on all South Africans to protect the treasury. What is your interpretation of that statement then, and what has transpired this past day?
Very concerning to come from a Minister of Finance. He did even say that we need to pray for the National Treasury. Those grave concerns that he was exhibiting I get a feeling that he goes into a room with a lot of concerns and he comes out in public and he puts it together so that we don't get dismayed as a country. It's not really desired. To be honest with you, I think it's not commensurate. It's not fitting for a country of South Africa's caliber. If you look at the depth of leadership that we have, demonstrated over a long period of time, and just the inheritance we have globally, this situation is not commensurate to the character that is within South Africa.
This situation avoidable, notwithstanding all the interests that we should guard and protect and so forth, but was this avoidable from where you're sitting?
It was easily avoidable, but I've now come to a conclusion. The falling knives. Good counsel will suggest that don't catch a falling knife. There's no one person who's above the country, and we can continue without individuals. And I think what needs to happen is to demonstrate that South Africa is above individuals, and we must put it in the center of decision makings, and we can move on. There may be some concerns along the periphery, but the strong quality leadership that can take this country in investment grade.
But we focused mainly on the financial system, the economics of it. But there are other probably unintended consequences that you can see, whether they happen or not. The social stability, for instance, and the political stability. How is this development likely to produce those types of the implications in terms of social and political stability?
South Africa is sitting with 53% of its youth unemployed. It is the highest rate in sub-Saharan Africa. It is now comparable to countries like Spain in Europe, who have now caught up with us in that front. So where we are now, I do want to plead that those who in authority need to understand and appreciate that we cannot continue on this path. If there's no economic growth and the young people go hungry, those who are educated behave the way we see at this point in time, it's an ominous sign. It requires minds to come together in a room and do this. Present a budget that is sound, that demonstrates fiscal policy is sound going forward. 2, make sure that there's economic reforms that turns around this growth lever, and it can be done. In my mind, it includes regional policy, building new cities in different municipalities to make sure that it can absorb a huge amount of young people working. We cannot continue on this path. If you were to project, if we stay the way we are the next 5 years, it's either one, we get a massive political change, in other words, the opposition parties get more voice, or we get a complete disarray in terms of an Egyptian type, in Arab Spring Egyptian type outcome, which is undesired.
Well, we'll see what happens on the 2nd of November, because he's already been instructed, the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, to present himself there. Lesiba Mothata, much appreciated.
My pleasure.
And it's not going to be an easy few weeks and a few months in South Africa, and we will see what happens. And we welcome your thoughts on this matter. Please join us in the conversation via Twitter. Share with us your sentiments regarding the move against Pravin Gordhan and the implications thereof at Team Modise.